Starstruck.
Well, welcome back to Joyride. I am Jared Brandon Flandy, and
I am Adam Mendenhall.
this is the show where we talk about all things vehicles and adventure, and we are back for another episode. How you doing, Adam?
Hey, not too bad. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. So I'm actually kind of excited about this. This originally kind of started out as I thought would be a bland topic, but as I started researching it more and writing it, actually how entertaining this ended up being. And we're going to be talking about when pedestrians were the people that ruled the road, not cars.
That is an interesting topic you wouldn't think about, but one that stood its place in time for thousands of years, I'm sure.
Yes. Before we get into that, we'll just make a couple announcements. By all means, check out our parent company's website, www.starstruckcompany.com. This show's on there. There's also plenty of other different projects and products we work on as well, so by all means, check that out. Also, we'd like to give a shout out to Noah Norwood of the Hot Rod Kid podcast. Noah is a professional automotive restorer. He works on classic Fords like Mustangs and the V8s from the Bonnie and Clyde era and that kind of thing. So once again, that is the Hot Rod Kid podcast, and that's available on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. So I'm going to open up the script here. You ready for this?
I am.
All right, a little bit of story time here. And this is entitled Walking the Distance, when pedestrians ruled the streets. When the word commute comes to mind, one likely has images and emotions about an early morning drive in your car, or frantically dashing toward a bus as it's about to leave, or being squeezed into a subway train as the clock strikes 5 p.m. during the height of rush hour. Now, I have been on the London Underground at 5 o'clock. That's an episode in itself, but it's shoulder to shoulder. You're packed in there like sheep. And when you go up the escalator, you don't stop. Otherwise, you will get trampled and run over.
Oh, my gosh. I can only imagine.
It's not an experience I'd recommend. And there's people that do that every day, too. These frustrating plights are the only recent problems, however. For most of human history, we've only had one way of getting from point A to point B, and that was on our own 2 feet. Modern science currently believes that all humans originated from Africa. Humans most likely began to migrate out of Africa, at least on a large scale, around 70,000 to 50,000 years ago. And then there was no on feet, obviously. They didn't hail a bus. Ever since then, humans have been walking around our planet. When the first cities began to emerge, streets would emerge as well, and thus the pedestrian was born. I know that sounds basic, but once upon a time there wasn't cities and roads and this idea of custom of going on a stroll, so to speak, you know.
Yeah, or in a designated path or area, you know. Yeah, what a difference.
In the late 1890s, the common street was a very different sight compared to what we may look upon today. The automobile was still a relatively new invention and were considered to be playthings for the rich and not a practical mode of transportation for the average person. So it's like, these silly things, you know, this is only for rich people. It's kind of like segways a little bit, you know. Yeah, everyone's like, oh, yeah, like I remember looking at when those were big built, kind of going, you know, maybe I'd buy one, you know. And then I saw the price on them. I was like, forget it.
Exactly. I thought the same thing, going, oh, that's interesting. But, oh, whoa, okay, yeah.
As a result, most city streets predominantly featured carriages and other horse-drawn vehicles. along with the occasional streetcar. Since these vehicles were not speed demons by any means, this allowed pedestrians to roam the street like they had done for thousands of years. So the street was where you was for walking. It was not meant for cars. They had wagons and stuff like that, and maybe some streetcars, but it was a pedestrian era. That's what a road was, When the first electric car, however, hit the roads of Britain, Parliament decided to introduce a nationwide speed limit. What do you think the speed limit was?
Oh my gosh, 3 miles an hour.
Okay, you're close. It was 4.
Oh, hey.
This was done so someone could walk in front of the motor vehicle while waving a flag to warn pedestrians that a driver in their car was coming.
Jeez. Not too fast, but fast enough.
During this period, there were human heads bobbing about in a sea of people as far as the eye could see in nearly every main street in the world. Walking the street was simply a way of life, and the custom was considered a basic right. So even if you think an old Western, just think of how many people are out just walking down the main part of the town there, That's kind of that image you got to think of.
And there was quite a few back then. You think about that,
Oh, yeah.
Prior to vehicles that we know today. Yeah, that would fill the street.
It was even common for pedestrians to stop and buy snacks from food vendors that were operating right in the middle of the road. Polite ladies of society were often known to stop in the middle of the street in order to chat with friends while usually manicuring their nails.
Don't mind me.
And I'm not trying to make a female joke. That's literally what I read.
Why is this so clustered up here? Well, that's what's going on.
Things would begin to change for pedestrians when the Ford Model T started to become available to the public for the first time. The Model T, of course, was not the first car in the world, but it was one of the first cars to be affordable to the everyday person. Initially, the Model T cost $825.
Wow.
Which, if you adjust for inflation, is $24,880 currently.
Okay, that really puts it in perspective. Again, we often forget the adjustment for inflation or current equivalency.
But, that would have been considered very affordable, at the time where it's, basically, I'm not being literal here, but all the cars at the time cost $100,000 or something of that, or something like that in that nature. So, the cost of the Model T would be greatly reduced when Henry Ford introduced the assembly line process in order to build the cars, however. So before that point, they were basically making by hand still, but with the assembly line, that went away now. With the assembly line system in place, this lowered the cost of a Model T to only $260 by 1913, which is about $4,020 in today's money.
That is still incredible in today's money.
Brand new car, $4,000.
$4,000. Wow.
The Model T additionally had another advantage for the drivers that owned them. The car could travel at speeds up to 45 miles per hour. This was good news for the drivers since they could make such good time when they had to travel now. But this was bad news for the pedestrians since cars were moving faster than ever in the street. In other words, they no longer had enough time to dodge them like when people were able to dodge slow-moving vehicles like wagons and streetcars. Now, Los Angeles at one point did have streetcars, and the streets were always just so full of people that Los Angeles people that lived there got to be known as Dodgers, and thus the name of the baseball team.
Oh, wow. So that's how that came about.
So pedestrians, as you can imagine, were not happy about sharing the roads with cars. And cars basically started to be considered invaders of the roads. They were evil. No one liked them, except for the people that bought them, of course. This belief was so verted it could be compared to gun rights within the United States. One man from Brooklyn even stated, quote, "The pedestrian, as an American citizen, naturally resents any intrusion upon his prior constitutional rights." And he's talking about walking, basically. The authorities also did not understand why people should not be allowed to roam about the streets as they pleased anymore. It was such a basic part of British American culture in general that it was simply hard for the public to accept a concept that had never been challenged in the memory of any living person at that period of time. What do you mean we can't walk in the street? We've always walked in the street.
Yeah, what the heck? These things need to get their own path somewhere else.
The cars are, streets aren't for cars.
No. No, they're getting in the way of my walking path.
It was a hard battle to fight for the car owner. By 1926, most American cities did not have any laws on the books that stated a citizen cannot freely walk about any city street. A few years earlier, during a traffic court session in 1923, a judge declared, quote, "Nobody has any inherent right to run an automobile in the street."
Wow.
It's totally flip-flopped.
It's completely flip-flopped. Yeah, it's hard to imagine, but it is.
Local authorities at this time not only favored the pedestrian rights of adults, but also children. For most children growing up, playing games like baseball in the street was just an accepted and normal coming-of-age practice. Once again, a judge, this time from Chicago, out of concern for the traditional childhood, stated, quote, "It won't be long before children won't have any rights at all in the streets."
Oh, my God. Their playgrounds will be just dismantled and taken away. Right in the middle of the
So
street.
basically saying, you little shits, get out there and play the street, goddammit. That's what
Yeah.
you're right.
Well, you think about the atmosphere back then, downtown Chicago or something like that. Where else did they have to go?
Mm-hmm.
It was out in the street or you were in the apartment or in the building,
I doubt they really had. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but I doubt they had what we think of playgrounds back then.
Not designated ones like we know today, I'm sure. Yeah.
But of course, this is back when you started working at 6.
Yeah, pretty much.
He continued by saying, "It won't." Yeah, I read that here. He continued by saying, something drastic must be done to end this menace to pedestrians and children in particular." He's referring to the cars.
These menacing cars.
So cars are basically the most evil thing in the world right now.
Well, I can see that, when it's impacting people day to day, literally. This is just like, it's right in front of your face.
The opinion of this judge was not unique. Most judges and magistrates tended to favor the pedestrian during this transitionary period. One judge, when describing a motorist in court, so a guy owns a car, right? He said, just a second here. So this is what the judge said. "Such persons as you are a disgrace to humanity."
I think of the image of like some guy in a top hat with a feather or something, or something ridiculous where it's, "You commoners need to get out of the way as I get in my motor vehicle."
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The anti-automobile sentiment by far and large was common among both the public and lawmakers alike. Letters to newspapers were one of the main forms of widespread public discourse in the early 20th century. So there's no internet and Twitter and all that. So if you want to get something out publicly, it's got to go in the newspaper, obviously. An excerpt from one letter said, quote, "The pedestrian is forced to subject to the tyranny of the automobilist."
Tyranny.
Tyranny. It was simply signed pedestrian. They feel very strongly about this.
I mean, it couldn't feel much stronger.
And I guess, it's never been, you've always done it. I guess I can understand to a certain degree why they're this upset,
Yeah, it's a drastic change.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that people have always done. So, yeah, huge change, and we know how much people like that.
Yeah. Newspapers did not sit on the fence regarding the battle between the motorist and the pedestrian, however. They were quick to take the side of the automobile owner. Not necessarily because of an inherent need to support the rights of either side, but because the new car companies at that time were a prime source of revenue in the form of advertising.
Ooh.
So,
Here we go.
yeah.
Advertising.
So come
getting
down
its
to
dirty mixing things.
Yeah, come down to Joe Schmo's Ford and buy your brand new Model T. And of course, the papers want that ad in there to get the money.
That's right. Revenue.
Yep. During the early 1920s, the mainstream public began to hate the automobile so much it made car sales drop by 12% between 1923 and 1924.
Wow.
This was surprising because car sales had been skyrocketing due to the affordable cost of cars, such as the Ford Model T. Pedestrians were not totally out of line when making statements like this, however. By the mid-1920s, automobile accidents made up at least 2/3 of the death tolls of cities at a population greater than 25,000 citizens.
Oh, jeez.
So people are getting hurt because there's no regulation. And we kind of talked about that in that other episode about William Phelps, who put that in place. So this is kind of before that.
Mm-hmm.
By this time, the New York Times had headlines such as "Nation Roused Against Motor Killings" and "The Homicidal Orgy of the Motor Car."
Oh, my. Interesting choice of words, especially for back then. They really want to hammer it in, too. Just really get it sink into people's heads how evil these things are.
They're homicidal,
Yeah.
and they're having an orgy, apparently, too.
Wow.
With the automobile becoming a more common sight, crosswalks were introduced, but most people did not pay attention to them, let alone use them. A safety expert from Kansas City said that when policemen tried to nudge people to safer parts of the road, or they tried to, but it was usually to no avail, the expert elaborated more about these altercations by stating, quote, "Pedestrians, many of them women, would demand that police stand aside."
Get out of the way.
Don't tell me where to walk.
Yeah.
Despite the apparent motives of the law, most police officers did not like these newfangled things called automobiles either. Some policemen were even so hostile toward motorists that their superiors in the respective police departments had to remind the officers that they were simply dealing with car owners and not hardened criminals.
Jeez.
As the war for the rights to the road raged, the car business was starting to lose money and was now on the offensive more than ever. So pro-automobile groups cooked up a clever and dirty PR campaign to turn the tide of the fight. Okay, so this is what they ended up doing, all right? At least in regards to this situation, it was not rural people who were trying to stop progress for once, but the world's city dwellers. As a result, automobile owners came to the conclusion they may be able to use this to their advantage. With this in mind, they invented a new term, jaywalking.
Oh, here we go.
In the early 20th century, a J-A-Y, referred to a country bumpkin or redneck. So, by suggesting to city residents they were acting like inferior members of society, this would motivate them to change their pedestrian habits. It worked. So they're basically being publicly shamed. So some guy's going, "Hey, Cletus, you dumbass, when you're not, messing around with your cousin, use the crosswalk."
Exactly.
That's what they're saying. Are you born in a barn?
I don't want someone to talk to me that way.
As the 1920s continued to progress, things began to change. Groups that were advocates for the motor car continued to be remorseless during their fierce crusade in order to legitimize the horseless carriage. Even though they were slowly losing the war, the pedestrians did strike back. If they could not have rights to the streets anymore, they felt they should at least have some basic safety rights. In the end, it was not a hard argument to make, since most of the auto accidents at this time generally were not adults, but children. So this playing in the street thing is not working out anymore.
Not working out.
Alas, as time passed, the rights of the pedestrian were no longer a main concern for society. When highways started to become more commonplace in the 1950s and 1960s, early computer models were developed to better regulate the flow of traffic, but they did not even take the time to factor in pedestrian behavior. With cars becoming one of the main forms of transportation in countries like the United States, they would dramatically change the landscape of the country itself. Cars allowed people to live further away from their jobs, so modern suburbs began to start appearing. Because before you had a quick mode of transportation, you couldn't live far from your job. You know, if you weren't on a farm and you lived in the city, you lived probably in the downtown area, wherever the insurance office you worked at. So because you could only walk to it or take the streetcar.
Yeah, you could only walk so many miles and
Yeah.
still make it there on time. So
Yeah.
it makes sense.
There's even speculation that self-driving cars will change current pedestrian habits, since these vehicles will rarely ever have to stop during their journeys. But that's at least according to the thoughts and theories at this time. So whether you are walking from your car to your desired destination across the street, or even going on a casual Sunday stroll on a nice day, may seem like an everyday part of life, but as we've learned, pedestrianism and rights to the streets were so much more important in the recent past. Fervently important, apparently.
Yeah, they were. It was lethal, literally on a daily basis.
The roads were not just for cars. They were the avenues of society itself. The streets was where public life used to be centered upon. Everything from buying groceries to a pleasant chat could be found in the once carless roads in almost every city in the world. Cars did not entirely win the war, though. Some cities in our current period of history have started to turn certain districts and roads into pedestrian-only areas. So there's been like bigger cities, you know, they'll take what was part of a highway or part of a road with traffic and shut it down, and then it's just a pedestrian thoroughfare essentially. Modern laws have also been put in place in order to make the world a safer place for pedestrians. With all of this in consideration, this proves the public will always fight for this most basic of human rights. Keep this in mind as you continue to walk through your own life and journeys.
Well put. Well put, indeed.
Walking.
Yes. And, to add to that, look both ways, please, everybody. Don't always assume, especially in this digital age we live in today, where everyone has their face in the phone, whether they're inside their home or they're out on the street. You can tell they're not looking at their surroundings, and we see that often with pedestrians. And
for those who don't know, Oregon has very strict pedestrian laws. They have total right of way. So if there's someone at the crosswalk, if you're in the car, you have to stop.
Yes,
you have to stop the flow of traffic and let them cross. I don't, is Washington that way, or is it the other way around still?
No, it's very close. It's very close as far as how we handle ourselves in Oregon and how that's mirrored and enforced. Yes, very much the same. Where it's not is, and this has been years ago, but when I lived in Arizona, people didn't respect it as much. And at that time, this is, mind you, early 2000s, it had one of the highest pedestrian death rates in the country. And you can see where people would go across some of these large intersections where there's 4 lanes of traffic, right, going opposing ways. And they just wouldn't keep their eyes open. And again, motorists would not keep in mind, hey, there could be a pedestrian walking across this crosswalk, and then they meet it the worst way. So
now, in most parts of continental Europe, you cross the street at your own risk.
Oh, really?
Like in Italy, there's no slowing down for anyone.
Jeez.
You better be beating cheeks across or you will get hit.
Well, I can't speak for others, but I can tell you for myself, I've always been a person where I'm looking both ways and I run. I mean, I look for the acknowledging signal that people had seen me, and I look for the cross, but I don't always just trust hey, it says I can walk now, and I'm Jesus. I'm impervious to all this, and I walk on water. No, I often remind myself of my own mortality and what it means to be, hey, you're going up against, 6,000 pounds of steel and plastic, and I'm not going to win that battle.
I personally don't really like the fact that we have the right of way here, because it's awkward when you're the one that's going to cross the street, because all the traffic has to stop for you, and they're all looking at you as you're walking across.
It is, yeah, especially in downtown situations or large intersections where it's like, oh, I'm don't mind me as I'm walking across here. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just last time I was in Europe, I think I've told you some of these stories, but I went from Croatia to Hungary to Austria, then finally ended up in Germany, right? And mind you, Croatia, when it came to walking across the street, it was like here, so if it said to walk or not, some people would walk if there was no traffic coming, even though it said don't walk. Mm-hmm. You know how that is, right? That was not the case in Germany. Now, we may have mentioned this in some episodes, but in German culture, you follow the rules by a T. There's no wiggle room. And I was walking with this guy. No, he was a German guy, and we were in Munich, and we get to a crosswalk, and it's got a don't walk sign, right? So we stop. There's no traffic coming, and there's a bunch of other people there just standing there, and still no traffic. And I look at my German buddy. I go, why are we not crossing the street? There's no one coming. Because it says we cannot cross the street. Well, yeah, I know.
But sure, yeah.
Yeah. But there's no traffic. Goes, it's against the rules.
You don't question the rules.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, we'll just stand here. And once it said go, then everyone went. Very different world in that regard.
That reminds me of, again, off topic, but the sketch comedy show Key and Peele, there was a situation like that where there's two pedestrians. They're both standing there at the intersection, business suits, corporate America. And he keeps asking the other person, hey, did you hit the crosswalk? Are you sure you hit the button? Because he's waiting. He's like, yeah, I hit the button. He goes, but it shouldn't be taking this long. And he's like, screw it. I'm not going to wait for the crosswalk to say go. And the second he steps out, he gets just plowed over by a car. So it was one of those things that brought it into the mindset of like, yeah, you just better wait till that thing says go.
I have read that a lot of those crosswalk buttons, they are, what's the word I'm looking for? Placebos.
Really?
They're not even attached.
It's just for our own feelings, essentially, that we have control, but we don't because they're all on timers. I could see that.
They don't do anything. So a lot of them don't. Some of them do, but a lot of them are not even hooked up.
Wow. That would make a lot of sense, actually.
It does, because, I think everyone's done it. You're just like, okay, I've hit this thing 7 times. And why am I still sitting?
And there's no one coming. Why doesn't it click go?
Yeah. Anyway, with that said here, I think we're going to start bringing things to a close here. Do you have any last-minute thoughts, opinions, ideas there, Adam?
The only thing I have to say, and I kind of already mentioned it, is just, hey, please just be aware. This is an interesting subject, but at the same time, and it's not just our local area, I think it's across the country. When you're out there walking across the road, look around, pick up, put the phone away even for a few seconds and just look around before you cross the street, because everyone wants to be safe, and nobody in a car wants to have that kind of situation, which we mentioned was commonplace years ago.
Or maybe you shouldn't have your AirPods on at the highest volume possible.
That too. That too.
I've seen that too. It's just like, oh, that reminds me. Before we're done here today, okay. So in Oregon, it's actually a law that you cannot pump your own gas.
It still is. I think it's us in New Jersey are the only ones, right?
Yeah, only 2 states. Yeah.
My God.
I've never had a big problem with it because there's an attendant at the station that fills it up for you. Okay, you just tell them what you want. I want yada yada of regular, and they do it for you. I had one guy. I'm not joking. One attendant. They had all the pumps had almost all of them had like a out of order one. And so I just rolled the window down and I saw the attendant there. I'm like, is there any pumps functioning? And he's just looking at me like a cow chewing its cud.
Anybody home?
Like, hey, I start yelling. I'm yelling in a parking lot at a fuel station, which is awkward as it is. He had his darn AirPods in.
Oh my God. And that's something that, because of how concealed those things are, that would explain a lot in my own experiences in the past of why there's no response from some people. Yeah.
It's like you're at work. Come on. I mean, I'm not trying to be too hard-nosed about it, but at least just one in a year or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, but before we bring things to a total close here, by all means, like I said, check out some of our other links in the description box below. Oh, we want to have another little script giveaway here. We did do this in the last season as well. So we want to give everyone a script. Trust me, but we obviously can't. So if you go into our descriptions, you'll see an email for this offering. So the first 5 people that respond in email, just put your name and address, and we'll send you a signed copy of the scripts we read from for this episode by me and Adam. So if you're interested in that, by all means, please check that out. So, with that said, I think we're going to bring things to a close, and we will catch you on our next episode of Joyride. What do you think, Adam?
We'll see you next time.
All right, signing out.